Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from. My name is Abhijit Bhaduri, and I am the host of this podcast called Career 3.0, in which we talk about how careers are evolving in this new world filled with Gen AI and everything else that you see. And creator economies are really a very major part of the opportunities that have come up in the more recent years. And today, our guest is just the kind of person you want to talk to for that. Megan Morreale has had about 10 years of content marketing experience and leadership experience. And because she was the head of content for Reddit and Taboola, she works with tech companies on content strategy and also with content marketers who want higher paying roles. So without any further ado, let's get started. Megan, thank you so very much for being here today. It's such a delight to have you come and talk to us about the creator economy. And it's something that so many people have written in, and I couldn't get a better guest for them.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Thanks. How did you get started on your journey? What did you study? What did you do? Where did you work? Tell us about that. What was your dream as you were growing up? What did you want to do?
I always knew that I wanted to be a writer. So when I went to college, I eventually settled on a journalism degree, which I don't regret. I think that that degree and my short experience in the world of traditional journalism really gave me some serious writing skills that were extremely helpful to me as a content marketer. So I graduated college during a really tough time in journalism when there was a lot of layoffs across news sites, and I would tell them my major, and they would be like, ooh, good luck with that. But I ended up doing some string work for some local newspapers covering like Board of Education meetings or like city council meetings, and had a lot of fun doing that. And while I was doing that, I met a gentleman who had a tech meetup, and he was looking for somebody to cover his tech meetup. And he owned a PR agency, and that meetup was sort of a way for him to find and connect with new clients. So I ended up working for him covering this tech meetup, and eventually ended up working for the agency where I really cut my teeth in tech for the first time. It was everything from like consumer apps to healthcare security, tons of different tech clients. And I did PR for a while. And while I was there, I think we were able to expand with some clients because I had these writing skills and I got to do some long form writing work. And after a while, I realized I really wanted to go in-house. I was kind of feeling like I could work on bigger projects and have a bigger impact as an in-house content marketer than I was going to at an agency. So I eventually made the leap to a company called Bounty Jobs. They are an HR technology company that still exists today. And I think I was a blog and social media coordinator there. And I was there for a few years, eventually became a digital marketing manager before finding my role at Taboola. I was there for 6 years, almost 7, and I grew their content marketing department into a online marketing department that covered all of our brand campaigns, SEO, and content creation across the board before finally moving to Reddit, where I was their head of content for a little over a year.
Wow, that's a very, very impressive journey. What skills do you think you developed, as you went through these stints? Because you worked outside of, through an agency providing services to multiple people, then you went in-house to large brands, and now you're also an entrepreneur. What really are the skills that you need which are different in these three kinds of jobs?
That's a good question. So the agency side of things, I think I really learned two things. I'd say I learned client relations, and then I also learned how to make content interesting for somebody outside of the company. Like we were constantly pitching our content to try to get either PR coverage or backlinks or whatever it would be. So I learned like brevity, how not to waste somebody's time, how to do research on people and find out if something would be interesting to them with nothing more than like their name and the internet versus, moving in-house. I think I really leaned into my interview skills from my days as a journalist. And I learned that like, you need to be a good writer to be in content marketing. If you're working for companies like I was, where it's very writing first, I think these days video skills, audio skills, those things are very important too. But when I was doing it, it was really a writing world. So I leaned into like interviewing customers, trying to find stories, those types of things, I think helped me stand out from the crowd versus somebody who would just kind of like get a blog topic and then do some research online and write about it. And then as I was growing, I really started to lean into channel strategy, things like SEO or, social media channels and how to create content for different types of channels so that they would be successful. And I started working on campaigns instead of just single pieces of content and learning how to measure them and plan for them and create content for them. And I think that's what really helped me grow my career within Taboola. And then at Reddit, I did almost no content creation at all. My team, honestly, almost did no content creation at all. It was all about strategy and building cross-functional relationships and getting the resources to get things done. So it was almost like I stopped being a content marketer and started learning how to sell content marketing internally and get the resources for it. So I almost had like a very different skill set every time I made a jump, or I learned something new, I should say.
Which one did you enjoy the most? I mean, you are also now an entrepreneur. Do you like that more than in-house?
Right now, yes. I always reserve the right to change my mind. But yeah, I really am enjoying not having to make the case for a strategy right now because I am the person that I need to make the case for the strategy for. I really am enjoying entrepreneurship, but I think I really enjoy creating content, and the higher you go in a corporate environment, the less you actually do that. And I mean, I had so much fun in my role at Reddit. There's so many creative people there and I learned a lot, but I found myself day after day missing just like sitting down and looking at a campaign, talking to creative people, like considering how to make something better. We really leaned on like agencies or other teams within Reddit to do the creative side of things. So, I love strategy. You can't have content without strategy and you can't have strategy without content. Like they're really two different sides of the same coin, but I think I'm really good at content creation and that's like what I'm on planet Earth for. So I like roles that allow me to do that.
How many times do you think individual content creators actually think about a strategy that they need to have? And how should they be thinking about a strategy if you're an individual content creator?
So this is kind of a loaded question. I have like a loaded answer to this question. I don't really think it's their job. And I think if they're being asked to do that, they're in an environment where they're not going to be set up for success. If you're the person spending time writing an article, making a video, developing a podcast, whatever the piece of content may be, hopefully you're working with other people who, unless you're like a one-person content marketing show, which in that case, I'm not really talking to you. But if you're working for like a mid-sized company or something that's not a true startup, hopefully somebody else is working on the strategy. It's, they're telling you this is an SEO article, or this is a social media campaign, or this is a PR campaign, and you can kind of adjust how you write the piece accordingly. I think that when content marketers or content creators just get ideas, we want to write about AI tools, sort of like, okay, why do you want to write about it? What's your point of view? Where's it going? What are your goals for this piece? Having those skills to be able to ask those questions and shape a piece of writing or a piece of content based on the answers to those questions will definitely help you move from content creation to strategy and like leadership within content marketing if that's your goal. But I actually think that content marketing is like the only department within marketing that has to do both and then also side gig for all the other marketing departments. Like we have to create the stuff, we have to build strategies for our own channels, and then also write everybody else's stuff or make everybody else's stuff. And it sets content creators up for burnout.
Why is burnout almost synonymous with content creation? What do you think drives that? I mean, is it the uncertainty? Is it the constant change in the platform? Is it fickle audience? And what is it?
I think that those things definitely come into play. But if I'm really being honest, I think a lot of time it plays out in office politics. So when you think about the term content marketing, right? Everything is content. We know that everything is content. We're content creators. We're content marketers. When we make content, we're influencer marketing for some reason. Sales stuff is content. Event decks are content. Now, everything is content. When we originally developed the content marketing department, I feel like it was in the days where it was just blogging and tweeting. And content marketing basically did everything else that wasn't a traditional marketing pillar, like events, PR, ads. And now it's sort of grown into digital marketing or growth, and content sort of became like, oh, you guys are the team that makes the stuff, kind of. But also you own SEO, and also maybe social media, and also maybe email, depending on which organization you work for. I encourage content marketers to pay close attention when they're applying to content marketing jobs about what they're asking for, because you can kind of sniff a little bit when a company just doesn't know what to do. They know they need to blog or have a YouTube channel or do social media, but they don't really know why. It's a little bit of a red flag. You're just going to end up being a catch-all for making stuff for everyone. I want to be clear that that's fine. I do think that there are definitely like marketing team structures or even company structures. You just make content for other teams that create the strategy, or you are a content marketing team that owns very specific channels and you have the strategy and the content for those channels, whether it's SEO or TikTok or YouTube or whatever. But when you have to do both, do you set yourself up for failure?
When you think about B2B content, there's a company which is interested in entering a new geography. What are some of the things that the content marketer should advise the leadership team how to go about doing that?
I love this question. I did this a lot at Taboola. We would expanded to a lot of different geos. And my very specific answer to this is that translation is not localization. Like, you can't just translate your website or translate the marketing materials that you have and publish it in a different country completely out of context. You really need to focus more on transcreation of your content, which is essentially a rewrite for that country. I like to use the example of a holiday campaign. So the holidays are different, obviously, everywhere around the world. So in the US, maybe we are really big in Black Friday. I think I remember that Mexico was like hot sale. There was Singles Day in China. Like, it's different everywhere. So when we would sit down as a global marketing team and talk about the holidays, when, headquarters is in like New York, and your immediate gut reaction is like Christmas, Black Friday. And it's like, okay, but when we talk about localizing this campaign, we need to look at trends in different countries and what they actually might be interested in for their country. So you're talking about really creating 10 different pieces of content, not just one, and then translating it across the world and hoping that everybody will bite.
Oh, that's such an amazing example, because, that's one of the things, or even sports. I mean, the relative importance of sports in different countries is, what you should be looking at. What trends do you study, to build your understanding constantly? Or if you're getting into a new geography, what are some of those things that you would look for?
I guess it would depend on the company. So I have worked in advertising for a long time, so my answer is really going to be advertising based. But I would start with those big cultural milestones, but the purchasing milestones that are important for your company. So for advertising, it's usually like back to school, summer sales, the holidays. If there's like Mother's Day, Valentine's Day equivalents, those like purchasing cultural milestones. But if you are an HR benefits company, you have a clear season of like open enrollment. I would kind of look for whatever milestones are big purchase milestones and start there. And like, that's probably the best place to invest your time and resources in looking for trends or creating localized content for a region.
When you look at individual content creators who are trying to monetize their content, what is the right way to go about doing that? I know that you've got a website where people can connect, and I've put the link out there at the bottom. You can see the ticker. But what happens when somebody like me were to put their application? What happens after that?
So the application review really focuses on helping content marketers find better roles, either outside of content marketing or within content marketing. And the crux of it comes down to that your resume is sort of like a dating profile for a company. And I think people look at their resumes and think, I have to craft this perfect image of myself that will attract lots of different companies. But unlike a dating profile, you can have a ton of different resumes, right? You can have hundreds of resumes. You can only have one dating profile per platform. But I help them understand like that resume is basically marketing them to the company. And it doesn't need to necessarily include every single thing that you've ever done in your career. You just want to make it crystal clear that you're the right fit for the role in front of you. In marketing, we talk a lot about interviewing our customers and then using the words that come out of their mouths in the copy so that it resonates with them. You should do the same thing with a job description. There are so many ways to describe owning a content calendar. When you think about it, there are 100 different ways. Just say it the way they're saying it. If they say, ideate several campaigns for blogs, white papers, and social media across the year, say that. Don't say owned a content calendar. It means the same thing. It's the same skill. But when you echo their words back at them, you sort of subconsciously signal to a recruiter that you're the right fit. And also you get in keywords that are in the job description to pass the talent acquisition systems. So I ask people to submit their resume and then also a job that they're interested in. And I walk through that process with them on how I would customize a resume for a given role, and also just try to take them through the process so that it's not so much work. There's nothing more frustrating than spending hours and hours and hours on a custom application and then never hearing back from anyone again. It doesn't have to be so much work to customize something. There are ways to do it where you can spend less than an hour on each application.
When you think about opportunities for monetization, what should freelance content creators be thinking about? How do they create a strategy to monetize their work? Is it a good idea to do some of these one-off campaigns? If you're a micro-influencer, if you're an influencer?
I think so. I think if you're a content creator and you're looking to monetize an audience and you don't really have a product, you just kind of grew this audience and aren't really sure what to do next, I think brand partnerships are a very natural place to start. And I know others give this advice a lot too, but I think it's very important advice. Just make sure that you're working with brands that you would actually genuinely already talk about in your content, because I think audiences can sniff when you're not being authentic. But on the other hand, I also think that most people kind of know how this works these days, and that they also understand that the influencers that they love they need to eat. So they kind of, they look at the ads and don't necessarily hate them for it anymore. When I think about other ways to monetize though, I think the best way to monetize is to sell some sort of value added product. I know a lot of influencers do merch, but if you could sell services or some sort of information, I don't want to say a course because I know it's we're so inundated with courses these days, but I'm selling these application reviews as a way to monetize an audience that I've built on LinkedIn, but I think it's truly valuable to the audience that I've built there. So if you can find a way to sell a value added product, it'll probably be more effective for you than just leaning into brand sponsorships or affiliate links.
Is it harder for a person to find a B2B partnership, or, should they do just, this is a t-shirt that I have designed and just sell it? What are there two different routes, and how does one decide what is the easier route in the short run versus a long-term strategy?
So there are many platforms that you can sign up for to find brand sponsorships. I know SEMrush has an influencer matching program. I think ShareSale does. There are a lot of different platforms that you can sign up for free. Same with affiliate marketing. You can go get an Amazon affiliate profile today and start, dropping in affiliate links to products that you use and review on your TikTok. So that's definitely the lowest barrier to entry. I just think that it kind of agitates the relationship that you have with your audience. So you need to do it sparingly. There are some exceptions to that rule, accounts that have grown so large just by using products. One example that I can think of on TikTok is a woman named Kaylee May. I love her content. She, just uses different products throughout her home in a very aesthetic way, and it's fun to watch. And that lends itself really easily to affiliate links. I don't know for sure, but I would imagine that most of the revenue that she makes comes from her Amazon affiliate account. But if you've built a more general audience that doesn't just lean into affiliate marketing so easily, then I would consider possibly spinning up a product. And to your point, all three of these things are an option. It's not you have to choose one or the other. You could start with just, looking for some brand sponsorships on those platforms that I mentioned, putting out some affiliate links while you work on a product idea. But I think that the accounts that really grow with a bang are the people that they make true livings off of their audiences. They're selling a value added product.
When you think about the approach that you would use for a platform like LinkedIn versus Instagram or TikTok, what do you see are different considerations you would use to pick up a brand collaboration or find possibilities? Let's say on a platform like LinkedIn, which is a certain kind of an audience, is meant to be a professional collaboration, professional product, or Instagram, which could be more generic. Does it mean that if you do one, you can't do the other, or it dilutes your brand? Or, how do you sort of find that?
No, I mean, I think you can do as many as you have the time and energy to do well. Try to do them all at once probably isn't realistic. But I mean, I think you've kind of drawn some obvious parallels, and I think they exist for a reason, right? Like LinkedIn is all about work and growing a business. So partnering with companies that are selling B2B products is a natural fit there. But as long as you bring it back to like work or business, like, say you are trying a new juice, like a ginger juice shot to give you energy during the day, you could partner with that company if you have a big LinkedIn audience and talk about how it's giving you energy throughout your workday or something, as long as you're kind of like bringing it back to the context of the platform. Instagram and TikTok obviously lend themselves really well to visual products. Like you're probably more likely to partner with a fashion brand or a home goods brand or, something that you can see yourself using and reviewing on TikTok. But again, like there are so many huge following accounts of people kind of like parodying the workday. Like those B2B products have a place on LinkedIn too, but it's going to be funnier. If you are working with a company that has a really corporate brand, they might not love the like parody about how much their employees hate all hands, and then they log into the, whatever. But you'd have to be willing to find a company that could kind of lean into the feel of the platform.
I also think that in addition to everything that you said, Megan, that you should naturally find a fit with your personality and potentially find a fit with the kind of work that you would do. And you said something which is really interesting. You said that if it's a product that you naturally use, so if I use a certain kind of a product naturally as part of my day, whether in my personal use or professional use, that's a first place to start where you have a brand collaboration partnership possibility. So that is one of the interesting things that I picked up, that how do you find that collaboration? It's almost like thinking about building a friendship. You don't just make friends with everybody in the neighborhood. You find some people that you vibe with, and then you sort of build on that. So for those who joined in late, we are talking to Megan Morreale about everything about her experience where she's worked on large brands such as Taboola or Reddit, and then now is actually helping content marketers find better paying jobs and finding jobs which are, as she says, a lot more dignified. So I have put a link to the place where you can find her if you want to do an application review. How do you get yourself an assignment that you are looking to do, and she can help you find that match. I want to now move to a different segment, which is if you're getting started as a content creator, what is the right way to find content? Or is it that you first find the content and platforms are independent, you can put any kind of content anywhere? How do you go about doing that? Because let's say a platform like Instagram has a lot more videos and visual content. LinkedIn is a little different and TikTok is a little different. So if you take these three, what are some of the ways in which one can think about their strategy and approach?
So I got some really good advice when I was starting to dive into content creation for myself. And I actually think that this goes for independent content creators and content marketers within a company. I know you'll hear the advice a lot, like go where your audience is. And that is kind of good advice. But I took the unignorable challenge with Kaylin and Neil from Demand Curve. And their advice was to choose the place where you like to hang out and where you have skills that naturally lend to the platform. So I mentioned a little bit at the beginning, I'm good at writing. I'm not really a great video editor, and I actually find it so tedious. Like I don't find joy in editing video, which is something that I try to find workarounds for because video is such a big part of content today. But I very intentionally chose LinkedIn because I like hanging out on LinkedIn and because the platform lends itself to writing skills. You do need some design skills, obviously, videos, carousels, images, but the meat of what's there is really writing. And there were other choices for that, right? Like I could have chose Twitter. I could have chose to try to go all in on Reddit, but I just find myself opening LinkedIn a lot and scrolling through and wanting to comment there. And that natural momentum is so important for consistency and for growing an audience, which is like, it's like the core of your growth is being able to show up there every day. So that would be first. If you love hanging out on Instagram or you love hanging out on TikTok, you can kind of make any topic work on any platform, I think. And then when it comes to like finding content ideas, I think that the best ideas are personal stories. I know the content that I've created for myself and for companies, the sort of like how to step-by-step stuff does well for like evergreen relationships with your customers. But on social media, when you're looking for that like burst of engagement or to reach the most amount of people or get people to like convert, personal stories work best. So I would try to have a system for collecting those types of personal stories in your day-to-day life. So you always kind of have a bank of ideas to pull from when you sit down to create content.
You talked about something that it instantly resonated with me, that, you have your great superpower is writing, in which case, what are ways in which you can use writing for different kinds of platforms? So how would you use writing, say, on Instagram? Because that's not really a place where a lot of people come to read a lot of long format. On Medium, maybe yes, but on, Insta, no. LinkedIn, potentially yes. So how do you sort of make that? The same story, can you give me an example of where the same story can be used for LinkedIn and Insta and say Medium or something?
So if you have an idea, for instance, I wrote an article about 10 signs that you're really a writer. And I to create a distribution strategy where I had native content for all of the platforms. So for LinkedIn, I summarized the post, but I talked about how being a writer has helped me grow my career. And that did really well on LinkedIn. And then I created a reel for Instagram and I shortened the post into a script, like a reel script. Shot a video of myself, edited it, and posted it on Instagram. Another strategy I could have used is try to write some very impactful or quippy one-liners and posted them as images. But I think that it's the reach on those might be smaller than they are on like a reel these days. And same for TikTok. I just tried to lean into my writing skills to create a script that I thought would do well for the platform. But it makes the video a little more formal, but it was a way for me to lean into my writing skills and feel more comfortable in front of a camera where I'm not in like my natural environment.
When you create content like that on Reels and you're putting the same thing, that's a great example that you can really summarize any kind of content and repurpose it. When you do that, you kind of almost rewrite the entire thing, or you write one masterpiece, which is, let's say, it's got 800,000 words, whatever it is, 500 words. And then do you take sentences and create posts that you can do? Or do you just rethink the idea and rewrite it for that platform? Which of the two?
I usually rethink the idea and rewrite it for the platform. And if you are in a position where you can outsource this, it's a really easy way to grow your audience quickly. For in-house content marketers that might be working with like a company budget, I talk about this a lot. It seems like a small detail, but a lot of content marketers will outsource a piece to a writer and then also ask them to write the LinkedIn post, the Twitter thread, the TikTok script, whatever it may be. But instead of doing that, focus on finding writers that have skills for the platforms that you want to use to distribute on. So maybe the original piece of content is an article, like I mentioned. So you have somebody that's really good at writing articles, write that article. And then find someone who's an expert on writing LinkedIn content, give them that article and ask them to turn it into a LinkedIn post. Give someone who's an expert on TikTok that article and ask them to write a TikTok script, or come up with an idea on how to distribute that idea on TikTok. You're going to have so much more success that way. It is a lot more work, but I almost say like, yes, it would be less work to just like take little snippets from my article or just kind of repurpose something for the platform, but it would be wasted time because it's not going to do as well as recreating an idea for the platform itself.
Do you think the days of long form content is gone, or is it there is a place for long form content? Since you're a writer, it's a sensitive question. I get asked Not.
No, I don't. I'm kicking myself because I want to attribute the quote correctly, but I saw something recently that was like, people don't have short attention spans. Like they'll sit down and listen to an hour-long podcast or watch 13 hours of Game of Thrones or read a really good novel, but they have short consideration spans. So what's really important, no matter what type of content it is hooking them. You have to get really good at hooks, and you have to get really good at determining what is actually valuable. Like we say that all the time. It's all over the internet. Create something valuable. Like, okay, great advice. How do I learn what's valuable? But the answer to that question depends on you. It depends on your product. It depends on your industry and your audience. So figuring out how to find what's valuable to them and hook them is really the key. And if you can do that and you can create something valuable, something engaging, people will stick with you for as long as it continues to be valuable and engaging.
That's a perfect answer that, people, if they can binge watch 13 hours of Game of Thrones, it really means that the longer the time that you want them to be engaged, the higher is the need for better storytelling.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the ratio, that if it's a 2 seconds investment from the audience, they are going to be more tolerant of something because they're really only spending 2 seconds. One way that I talk about this is, think about, are you going to be more careful when you buy candy for a smaller amount of money? It's just one candy, and you'd say if you don't like it, it doesn't really matter. But if you were to go and buy a car, which costs a lot, you are going to spend a lot more time and energy researching it, and you want a better return from that. And therefore, even if something minor doesn't work, it really irritates you, and you're going to be really upset about that. So I think that's the ratio that I kind of use for myself. The longer the format, the more value you better have. Is it a good idea to repurpose some of the writing content into video or audio?
I think so. I like to think of it not as repurposing content, but repurposing an idea. So for instance, I'm going to take like a piece of my application review. There's an idea in there that I've seen a lot of feedback on LinkedIn from, to put like tags next to a job role so you can make it easily skimmable. I've repurposed that idea in different types of content across many platforms. I've written an article about it. I've written on LinkedIn about it. I've tweeted about it. And it's not the exact same post every time, but I've tried to make sure that I make that idea relevant in different types of topics, depending on what I'm talking about. So, maybe one day I'm talking about collecting information throughout the year so that when you sit down with a review with your boss, you're prepared with a list of accomplishments so you can ask for that promotion or raise. And I'll also throw in there that, that list is also really handy when you're creating a resume, and like, hey, maybe throw some tags on your resume. So like thinking about how to repurpose the idea, I think that like repurposing content is critical and key across different platforms. I think that you have to think of it as recreating content instead of just copying and pasting it or repurposing it. Otherwise, you're probably not going to get a lot of return on that investment of your time.
So the piece that you're recommending is to think about it as rewriting the idea. That if, let's say, one of your content pieces was about you're making sure you're stacking up you have a review, you're spending the week, find out what went well, and you just sort of really track that. So you have a laundry list of different things, categorize them and put tags and say, okay, this is really what I did outside the organization with the clients. This is what I did inside with my team. This is what I did for myself. Here is how the set of courses that I've taken. All these can be different tags, which makes it much easier for you to create conversation starter when you're going in for a review. Use a similar approach that you're doing for everything else.
Maybe a more relatable example that I just thought of was I wrote an article on Medium about how I feel like I overcame burnout. And that article was like a very step-by-step guide. And I posted a TikTok video about it. And I did instead like a funny conversation with myself about I had 2 different outfits, right? And I was acting like I was 2 different people and kind of like trying to tell myself that I was burned out, and me being like, I'm not burned out. And it was more like a joke. So I took like the same concept of talking about how I overcame burnout and turned it into like a funny skit on TikTok versus on Medium, where it was like a long form how-to. So yes, I repurposed that idea, but I really recreated it for the platform I was on. I could have just sat there in front of the camera and talked through the ways I overcame burnout, but I don't think that would have done as well on TikTok.
When you think about the success of an article, say on LinkedIn, what is the way that you measure it? Is it by the number of comments? Is it by the number of likes? Is it by the longevity? Somebody refers to it 2 years later or 3 months later. What are ways in which we should be thinking about that?
So I guess it does depend. For me right now, I'm really trying to grow an audience and test ideas. I'm like early on in my entrepreneurship journey. So I am looking at impressions and engagement right now, but I'm doing so with a very specific purpose, not because I want to have the biggest audience possible, but I want to see which of my ideas are resonating with an audience and which would maybe make sense to like go deeper on later or might help sell a product later. I think that I see a lot of posts on LinkedIn actually about how we shouldn't be attributing social media to ROI. Like it should really be a brand campaign, but I don't think you should put channels and holes like that. You can have a series of posts on LinkedIn, for example, that are meant to expand your reach. Like maybe the goal for those posts really is to get in front of as many eyeballs as possible, build new relationships, delight people, and then a series of posts where you're really trying to get people to consider your products, and then a series of posts where you're trying to get them to convert. So using my own application review as an example, I might have a post that's like, the other day I posted something that was like the weirdest things I've ever written at work, and I made a list and I asked commenters to keep it going. And in the back of my mind, I was thinking like, I hope that this helps me reach a lot of people. But then I'll also post, I asked people to submit their resumes, and I did like a mini application review for a resume in the form of a carousel. That was more like a consideration post. I'm kind of giving people a window into what they might buy from me. And then maybe I run like a sale for application reviews or something. And that's more of a conversion post. So it depends on what your goal is. But I think that having a goal is important, because otherwise you can get caught up in just like, oh, I didn't reach tons of people with this post about my new product. It's like that was kind of never going to happen if that wasn't your goal in mind to begin with. It also helps you stay sane. So like not when every post doesn't go viral, you're not like, I failed.
What's the definition of viral? Does it change based on the platform, or is it a percentage of the people who follow you?
I don't think it has a definition. I think it's a ceiling that we have in our heart. Actually, truly, I'm sure some people would say 1 million impressions. Some people would say 10,000. I think like the definition of viral probably changes for each content creator as they grow and grow. There was a post that I did in March about AI and content marketing that got like 100,000 LinkedIn views. And to me, that felt like viral. But to like a Justin Welsh, who has, 1 million followers on LinkedIn, that does not feel like viral to him. So I think it kind of just depends on where you are and what it feels like.
One of the ways that I think about it is that when you write something, I think it's a bunch of different things, because sometimes it's not really the absolute numbers, but the kind of quality of the comments. That's one. There are sometimes people, when you write about something which people think is deeply personal, they don't necessarily put a comment. They will write to you in a DM, which is people will say, I want to talk to you about this, and here is how I experienced it. And it's very embarrassing to talk about it in public, but this is what I went through. I think having that relationship of trust, in my mind, is one of the biggest payoffs of the audience relationship that you build. So that's how I would sort of really look at it. It's not so much about numbers, but yeah, I mean, obviously, if nobody read it, then that's a sign that you did something which didn't connect at all. But yeah, by and large, I would say that that's how I would sort of look at it. One last question that I want to do before we end. What are ways in which you can build a loyal community? What is, is it about the frequency of posting? Because you hear a number of things that these are the right days to post on LinkedIn. This is the time window where you should post on LinkedIn. These are the things that, are those true?
Maybe for reach, but not for community building. For that specific example, I find a lot more success posting on LinkedIn in the morning than I do in the afternoon, for example. But when it comes to building community, I think that I spend a lot of time answering people's comments and talking to them like I would a person. And I think that's really what's most important. I find that the people who I have either had actual conversations with in the comment thread, or made them laugh because I said something sassy, or, maybe we've done an application review together, or I reviewed their application in a mini application for free on LinkedIn. Those people repost my stuff a lot and have like a lot of nice things to say and start talking to each other and kind of building this community. So it's a kind of a grassroots way of looking at it, but I really try to make sure that I'm coming across as a human online that wants to connect other humans. Another way that I do this, for example, on LinkedIn specifically, is if I am sending connection requests, I'll try to go find a post from that person if they've posted like in the past week and add a thoughtful comment before I send the connection request. And I also try to answer every single DM I get, even the sales pitches that I didn't ask for, because I want to send a signal back to people that I am a real person here trying to connect with others, which is sometimes not always the case.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Megan. This has been absolutely phenomenal. I've learned so much about, how you can build an audience no matter which platform that you do. And, I think your ideas about connecting back with the idea before you repurpose something, it's not just a blind copy posting or shrinking that. It's the idea that you should be looking at and, the way to build it. It was super helpful for me, and I truly appreciate your taking time to come and talk to us. And for all those who are watching this, do follow Megan. The link is given right below, and you can follow her on LinkedIn, as well as, go to her website, which is based on her name. So meganmorreale.com. That's an easy one to sort of find out. Do you know the name? You can find her. So thank you so much once again. Appreciate you joining us. Have a wonderful rest of the week.